Hey, everybody. I'm Jeff, and this is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Matt is on vacation this week, so we took an old talk of his and we broke it up into 5 sections. Today is part 2 of that talk from Matthew chapter 5. Corresponds quite a lot with where we are in Matthew chapter 23. If you didn't catch yesterday's episode, you might want to do that before you move on, because we're going to jump right into this one, like right now.
Matthew 5:17. Don't think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I haven't come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. I've not come to abolish the law, I've come to fulfill it. Well, there were a bunch of people who, I'm guessing when he said that, just exhaled. I almost imagine you could hear it. So many people who wanted to believe in this guy, so many people who wanted to follow him, people who had a sick relative who wasn't sick anymore, people who had never understood the relationship between God and people, and they heard Jesus teach, and all of a sudden, it clicks and it makes sense. But there's this nagging thing, like, well, is he going to undo everything God has done? Is this a new religion? Is this a cult? Are we going to Crazyville? It's compelling, and I kind of want to go to Crazyville, but I can't go to Crazyville. And he opens with, I haven't come to abolish the law or the prophets. Okay, so he's still on Team God. Cool. How does one fulfill the law? Imagine if somebody really compelling who had done lots of compelling things around the country showed up next week, was like, hey, you know the Constitution? Well, I am the completion of the Constitution. All right, what does that mean? I can't even picture a way to illustrate that or what that would look like. I am freedom and liberty and eagles incarnate. Like, I don't know, I don't get it. But when we use the term law in the New Testament, the way Jesus uses the term law, which is the same way that his original audience would have used the term law, we're talking about something a little different than just the ground rules for behavior that organized Jewish society. We know, because of what happens later on in the book of Matthew, that there were already people coming up to Jesus and saying, you're a problem. Jesus is a threat to Moses and Abraham and the prophets. He is a threat to our establishment. He's a threat to our, to use our term, church. He's a threat to everything that we stand for and everything that we hold dear in society. If Jesus' teachings get root, there's no telling where we're going to go. It's a slippery slope to terrible behavior. People are going to start doing naughty, awful things. Those people who protect us, you know, the people who serve us through the Roman government and through our own government, you know, what place would they have? This is anarchy. Anarchy is dangerous. There's no telling where this might go. So they're panicked already. They're upset already. And that panic and upsetness translates into murderous anger down the road. Well, we always see that in Jesus' teachings, there is a general statement of truth that's going on. Jesus wants just normal people like you to get who he is and what the kingdom is and where you fit. But Jesus is always conscious of the critics who he knows are eventually going to kill him. He knows they're in the room. He knows what their gripes are. He's heard them complain. And sometimes he answers them directly. But keep the antenna out for this as we go through Matthew. Just as often, he sneaks in the little backhanded jab. And I think it works really well. Now, when I do it, my motives might be poor and my execution might be poor, so maybe I should steer clear. But Jesus does so artfully and as the author of truth. So he's been accused of being against the law, so he's addressing that he's not. It's a response to that charge. Further, it addresses the elephant in the room. Define the relationship. Where does Jesus fit with the big picture of all this stuff? But then he goes somewhere really weird. I've got to ask you to try to flush your brain of theology and all of this stuff and just come at this thing cold for a second. Imagine you have some ideas and you've been teaching them to people, and your ideas, they're a little countercultural. And people are freaked out by that, and some of them, important people, people with money, people with access to the people with guns, are starting to turn up the heat on you a little bit. And you get to a place where you're not sure your following is going to hold up or develop unless you can make nice with these people who seem to have bad intentions. Here's what I think you would do. I think you would equivocate, because I think that's what people do. I think you would soften the message. I think you would frame it in such a way that is accommodating to try to bring that crowd on board by just slightly altering or reframing things so their ideas can feel heard and accounted for too. I mean, that's how we work, right? I mean, we're creatures of compromise. I'm not even saying that would necessarily be a bad thing. Jesus is not a creature of compromise. He's not here to compromise with anyone. He's not here to bargain with the religious leadership so he can get part of the kingdom that he's here to institute if they can get to the negotiating table and work some things out. No, this is what the kingdom is, and he's the king. Why is anyone yapping about it? Jesus was patient to even allow them to question him or criticize him at all. But if he were a person, he would have tried to garner the support of his powerful, important critics by coming back and saying, okay, now, next. It's been suggested that I somehow want to undo things and cause anarchy religiously and eliminate the law. That's not what I want at all. I'm so sorry you got that impression. You know, here's a lengthy speech about how important the law is, and here's some of my feelings about the law, and here's some affirmation from my critics. You guys are doing a great job on some things. Thanks for that. I think we can work this thing out. And I backpedal. Frankly, I backpedal. I'm sorry if it came off that way. That's what we do. Jesus is like, nope, I'm taking this thing to the next level. One, not only are you misreading me and I'm not here to abolish the law, I'm the next step in the law. I am the evolution of the law. I am the completion and the fulfillment of the law. The law is less than me. The law points to where I am headed. How gross would that be if a person said it? But when God in the flesh steps up to the microphone and says something like that, it's one of those subtle moments where we realize this is not normal. This is not how peers talk. This is how God in the flesh talks. Fulfillment. Well, fulfilling what? Okay, the law. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter nor the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. I'm guessing there were some powerful religious types who are like, there, good, fine. Now that we can work with. The law means a lot of different things. I mean, the law in the Bible can refer to God's law. Like the things that he said, do this, don't do this, be this, don't be this. It's not a huge percentage of the Bible, but it's in there. It's a good chunk. So the law can simply refer to what God actually said in terms of what to do. The law in the New Testament can also include the notion of case law. Here's what I mean by case law. You know how we have a Constitution and we have those first 10 amendments, right? It's very short, and you can read it in a couple of minutes. But every time the Supreme Court, since 1803, when they gave themselves the power of judicial review, every time the Supreme Court reviews a court case and writes a decision on it, that becomes part of what we call case law. Case law is this enormous, you don't have enough time in your life to read through it, batch of laws and interpretations that are based on the Constitution to provide precedents for future courts as they hear new cases. And interestingly, the way our system is worked out is that case law goes back and in a sense redefines at moments what the original law of the land says. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm saying that's how it is. Well, the law in New Testament times was a lot like our judicial case law. There were all kinds of scenarios that came up where God says something like, hey, honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. People are like, yeah, we should do that. But quick question. So if I'm honoring the Sabbath and stuff, can I honor the Sabbath while mowing my lawn? Okay. But what about my whole field? Would that be okay? Can I clean my house on the Sabbath? Would that still be honoring the Sabbath? Or should I not clean and wait till Monday? Is it more honoring to have a clean house or not a clean house? How much exercise can I do? Can I work out on the Sabbath? You see what happens? And then people are like, oh, well, I guess we need to clarify that and clarify that further and clarify that further. And at first, that decision might seem silly, but you put 1,000 years of history behind it, and pretty soon those decisions are how things are. And those things become almost as set in stone as the actual stuff that God said in the first place, as it is in case law in our country.
Oh, there's more to come, but we're going to pause it right there. Come back again tomorrow for part 3. I'm Jeff. This has been the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.